My name's Sam, and I'm 32 years old. I've been with this company for over 7 years, working my way up, proving myself time and time again, always doing my best to keep the company on track and my department running smoothly. I'd never imagined that I'd be the one staring at a HR department door, my future in the hands of someone who didn't know the first thing about the work I did. But let me rewind to the beginning. It all started the day my CEO's nephew, who I'd never even met, walked into the office like he owned the place. I had heard whispers for a while that my boss was thinking of retiring. He was getting up there in years, but he still had his mind sharp and his company thriving. Everyone in the office had an unspoken understanding that we'd likely be working with his son, his real successor. We all knew him well, having seen him pop in for a few meetings every now and then, but it was always clear his dad was the one calling the shots. So, when the announcement came that the CEO would be stepping down and handing the reins over to his nephew instead of his son, I was shocked. I didn't know this nephew. I'd never even heard of him until that moment. And as it turned out, neither did most of the company. But what really set the stage for everything to come wasn't just the sudden news, it was the look on his face when he walked into the office for his first day. He barely made eye contact with anyone, walked right past my desk like I wasn't even there, and headed straight for the CEO's office. His whole demeanor screamed arrogance. The first day was mostly him talking to the higher-ups, probably going over whatever plans he had. I wasn't too concerned, though. I figured the transition would take some time, and once he got a sense of the company, he'd settle in and start working with everyone. Right? Wrong. Fast forward to the next morning. I just finished wrapping up a project and was sitting in my office when I got a call from HR. They wanted me in the office. My gut sank. It wasn't normal for them to call me in for anything, so my mind immediately started to race. Was I getting promoted? Was it about a new project? As I walked down the hall, I tried to shake off the unease, but as soon as I stepped into the HR office, I knew something was wrong. "Sam, have a seat," said Linda from HR, her voice unusually calm. I sat down and tried to brace myself, but she didn't waste time. "I'm afraid we need to let you go. Your position is no longer necessary." I blinked, not understanding at first. "What do you mean? What happened?" "Well," she began, "the new CEO," she paused, like she couldn't believe it either. "The new CEO decided to make some changes, and your position is being eliminated." I felt like the world had just shifted beneath me. "What? You're telling me that I'm being fired?" Linda seemed uncomfortable but nodded. "Yes. It's not personal, Sam. He just feels that your role isn't contributing to the company's future vision." I sat there, stunned. I had been with the company through thick and thin. I'd fought for this company like it was my own. And now, this kid, this stranger, was deciding my fate? I was so angry, but I tried to keep my cool. "I've been working here for over 7 years, I said, my voice steady despite the growing fury in my chest. "I've worked late nights, I've saved this company during crises, and now this kid who can't even be bothered to know who I am, comes in and fires me?" Linda didn't respond, but I saw the sympathy in her eyes. "It's not our decision, Sam. He's the new CEO. We have to follow his directions." I stood up, not bothering to argue anymore. "Fine, but you can't just erase everything I've done here." I walked out of the office in a daze. My phone buzzed, and it was a message from my coworker, Tanya. She'd seen the memo. I told her what had just happened, and I could hear her disbelief through the text. "Are you serious? The nephew? Who even is he?" I didn't have an answer to that. But in that moment, something inside me snapped. I grabbed my bag, walked to my desk, and started shutting down my computer. I didn't feel a thing. No sadness, no regret. Just an overwhelming sense of injustice. How dare he do this to me? After everything I'd done, after all the respect I had earned, how could this kid just walk in and decide I wasn't needed? But as I walked out the door for the last time, I had one thought. I was done. I wasn't going to let this go. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from the CEO's nephew. I rolled my eyes. It was already bad enough that he'd fired me without even knowing my name, but now he was calling? The voicemail was barely a minute long, and it was full of a mix of fake sympathy and business talk. He ended it with, "I just wanted to make sure you know it's nothing personal. We're just moving in a different direction." I couldn't help but laugh. The audacity. It was like he thought this whole thing could just be brushed off. But that wasn't the end of it. A few hours later, I got a call from the CEO himself, the actual CEO, the man I had worked for all these years. "Sam, I just got a call from my nephew's assistant," he said, his voice shaking with fury. "What in the world happened yesterday? Do you know who you were fired by?" I had to bite back a smirk. Yes, I know exactly who I was fired by. Your nephew. There was a long pause, and then, in a voice much more serious, he said, "Do you even know what your contract says, Sam? Do you know what you're entitled to?" Now, I was the one who was confused. What do you mean? I was just fired. The CEO cut me off. Let me check your contract. I'll call you back in a few minutes. My heart was pounding in my chest. What the heck was going on? Why was he suddenly so interested in my contract? Had his nephew messed up? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. The next call was brief, but it left me stunned. The CEO, his voice wavering in disbelief, said, "Sam, I've just looked at your contract. Your severance package, your benefits. You have a clause in there that my nephew didn't know about. A clause that means you're entitled to a lot more than he thinks. I'm sorry. I had no idea he'd do something like this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like something out of a bad dream. How could this kid have been so careless? And how was he going to react when he found out what he had just done?" The CEO's voice continued, "I need you to hold tight for a moment, Sam. I'll talk to him, but it's going to take some time. This is a big mess." I sat there for a few seconds, processing the words, but honestly, I was too stunned to really absorb it all. Here I was, standing in the middle of a storm I had never seen coming. A clause in my contract that this kid didn't know about? What kind of clause was it? What did it mean? I had worked so hard to get to this point, and now it seemed like there was something buried in the fine print that could change everything. It was only a few minutes before my phone rang again, and this time, it was from the CEO. His voice was full of frustration and a little bit of disbelief. "Sam, you don't know this, but your contract has a special clause regarding wrongful termination. And this, my friend, qualifies as exactly that." I felt a rush of relief mixed with confusion. Wrongful termination? I echoed. But I was just fired for no reason. This is a joke, right? The CEO was silent for a moment, like he was trying to find the right words. "It's not a joke. What you don't know is that when my nephew took over, we were transitioning all contracts and reviewing the fine print of our employees' agreements. Yours, however, was one that slipped through the cracks. He didn't realize that when he made the decision to fire you, he violated that clause. And I'm guessing no one told him, because, frankly, it's a big deal." My head was spinning. This was all so surreal. I'd never imagined that something as simple as a clause in my contract could be the key to flipping the entire situation. The CEO continued, now sounding more like himself, determined, firm. "We'll be taking legal action on this, Sam. It's not just about what happened yesterday. You're entitled to compensation, significant compensation. And, frankly, my nephew has made a huge mistake here. I'm going to personally ensure that this gets rectified, and you'll be well taken care of." I was speechless. I had no idea what to say. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and in the best way possible. All of a sudden, my anger shifted into something else. It was a mix of shock, disbelief, and honestly, a little bit of satisfaction. But that's when the CEO, with a sigh, said, "Look, Sam, I'll make sure to take care of the legal side. But here's the thing, you're not the only one. His actions have affected others in the company too. I'm pulling everyone's contracts to ensure this doesn't happen again. But I need to warn you, once this blows up, it's going to get messy. And my nephew is not going to take kindly to it." I was already 3 steps ahead. I could feel the tension building. The nephew had no idea what he just walked into, and now it seemed like his entire world was about to come crashing down. But it wasn't going to happen without a little push from me. "I'm not looking for a battle, but I'm also not letting this slide," I said, my voice steady. "If he wants to play games, I'm more than happy to play along." The CEO chuckled lightly, though I could tell he wasn't finding much humor in the situation. "Well, Sam, that's exactly why I called you. I don't think this is over. And honestly, if you want to make sure this gets sorted, you'll probably want to keep this whole thing quiet for now. We don't want to blow the whole thing up too soon." "I'll keep it quiet," I said, though I could feel my pulse quicken. This was far from over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything that had happened in my head, how easily it all went down, how it all felt like I was a chess piece on a board that no one cared about. But now, I was in a position of power. The ball was in my court, and I wasn't about to let it drop. The next day, I got a call from the nephew himself. "Sam," he said, his voice strained. I just found out about the clause in your contract. I didn't know. No one told me. I'm just trying to move this company forward, okay?" I almost felt sorry for him almost. He sounded like he was starting to realize what a colossal mess he had made. "I'm sure you didn't know," I replied, playing it calm, like I wasn't on the verge of taking him down a notch. "But you should have checked before firing me. You should have known what you were doing." There was a long pause. And then, in an almost pleading tone, he said, "I was just doing what I thought was best. Please. Sam, can we work this out?" I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I almost laughed at how quickly his tone had shifted. A few days ago, this guy couldn't even look me in the eye. Now he was practically begging, but I didn't let him off the hook. "I'm not looking to make enemies, but you made this personal," I said, feeling a surge of power. "I'll give you a chance to fix it. You don't get to undo what you did, but I'll consider taking a step back if you come to me with an offer. A real offer. Not some cheap severance package." "I'll talk to the CEO," he said hurriedly. "I'll get something worked out. You won't regret this." I hung up the phone, my mind buzzing with thoughts of what was to come. The CEO was already on my side, and now it was up to me to decide just how far I wanted to take this. If I played my cards right, I could walk away with more than just my job back. I could set the stage for something bigger. But what was I really after? The money? The revenge? Or was there something else I wanted to prove to myself? Something that was more than just getting back at a kid who thought he could come in and ruin everything I'd built? Before I could figure it out, the phone rang again. It was the CEO, and he didn't sound happy. "Sam, we need to talk. Now." The tension in his voice was undeniable. I had no idea what was coming, but whatever it was, I knew this was far from over. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. My pulse was already racing. "What's going on, CEO?" He let out a long sigh. "Sam, I don't even know where to start with this, but things are escalating faster than I thought. My nephew is scrambling to cover his tracks. He's trying to call in favors, looking for anyone who will back him up. But here's the kicker. He's making it look like you're the one who caused all this trouble." I froze. "Wait, what? How in the world is he spinning this?" "Exactly like you'd expect," the CEO muttered. "He's telling people that you were the one undermining the company, that you were trying to sabotage his leadership from the start. It's pure nonsense, but people are starting to listen." "Unbelievable," I said, shaking my head. "Is this kid serious?" "I'm afraid so," the CEO replied grimly. "And it gets worse. He's been rallying some of the upper management to back him up. There are whispers now about a power struggle in the company, and people are starting to choose sides." I felt the weight of the situation bearing down on me. It was one thing to get unfairly fired, but now they were painting me as the villain in some corporate drama I had no part in. This wasn't just about the clause anymore. It was about taking everything I had worked for and twisting it into a narrative that made me the bad guy. "Sam, I need you to do something for me," the CEO said suddenly. "You need to stand your ground. If you let this go, they'll destroy you. I'll back you, but we need to hit back. Hard." I didn't need any more convincing. My anger was building up, and the satisfaction of watching this arrogant nephew of his squirm was all I could think about. This wasn't just about money or revenge anymore. It was about showing them who was really in charge. "I'm in," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "What's the plan?" The CEO paused, his voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. "First things first, you need to come in for a meeting tomorrow. I want you to come in like nothing ever happened. You walk in with your head high, a smile on your face, and you act like you didn't get fired. Make it clear you've been through this before, and you're still here. Right? Walk in like I own the place." I muttered, my grin creeping back. "You got it," he said. "But we need to take it a step further. We're going to hit them with everything. I've already spoken to the legal team. We've got the clause on our side, and if they continue down this road, they're going to be facing a full-scale lawsuit." "Perfect," I replied, my adrenaline kicking in. "What's the catch?" "The catch is, Sam, you need to stay calm. Let them come at you. Let them try to tear you down. But when the time comes, you hit them where it hurts. They can't fight back against a well-planned, legal strategy, but you have to play it smart." The next morning, I walked into the office as if it was any other day. There was a buzz in the air, and the look on people's faces was telling. They weren't sure if they should be congratulating me for still being employed or offering their sympathies for what had happened. It was clear they were divided. I made my way to my desk, and sure enough, the nephew's supporters were already there, whispering among themselves. One of the senior managers, Karen, who had always been too eager to please the new boss, walked over to me with a tight smile. "So, Sam," she began, looking at me like I was some sort of strange animal in a zoo. I didn't expect to see you back so soon. I thought, well, I thought you were, fired. I raised an eyebrow. Funny, I thought the same thing. But here I am. She flinched slightly, and I could tell she was trying to figure out whether or not to challenge me. Well, you're lucky the CEO's backing you up, she said stiffly. Not everyone gets that privilege. Maybe it's not about luck, I said smoothly, letting the words hang in the air for a moment before I added. Maybe it's about knowing how to play the game. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to process my words. But before she could respond, another manager, this time a guy named Mike, walked by and gave me a knowing look. He was one of the few people in the office who had always been supportive. He gave me a thumbs up when Karen wasn't looking, a silent acknowledgement that I had allies. The tension was thick in the air as I sat down at my desk and waited for the inevitable confrontation. I wasn't sure how long it would take before the nephew showed up to face me, but I knew it was only a matter of time. Sure enough, around midday, the nephew walked into the office. His jaw was tight, and his eyes were darting around nervously as if he were trying to keep it together. He made a beeline for my desk, his face red with barely contained rage. "Sam," he said, his voice clipped. "I thought I made it clear yesterday. You're fired. So what are you still doing here?" I looked up at him slowly, not a hint of fear in my eyes. "I'm here to finish what I started, and to make sure you don't make any more mistakes." He narrowed his eyes, clearly taken aback by my calm demeanor. "I don't have time for your games. Get out before I have security escort you." "Oh, I think you'll want to hold off on that," I replied coolly, not budging from my seat. "Because I have something you're not going to want to ignore." The look on his face shifted from confusion to annoyance, and that's when I dropped the bomb. "I know about the clause in my contract. The one that says you can't fire me without following a very specific process," I said, leaning back in my chair. "And guess what? You didn't follow it. So you've got two choices. Admit you messed up and let me walk away, or we can see how much of this company you're really willing to lose over your ego." The nephew's eyes widened, and his mouth opened, but no words came out at first. He was caught off guard, and for the first time, he wasn't sure how to respond. I could feel the power shift in that moment. He knew I had him. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had control. But I wasn't done yet. The nephew stood there, his mouth working but no words coming out. For a few seconds, he just blinked at me, trying to process what I had said. I could see the panic creeping into his eyes. He wasn't the confident, entitled guy who had barged into this company thinking he could just steamroll over everyone. Now, he was just a kid who realized he'd messed up. "Why you think you can just threaten me with legal action and get away with it?" he stammered, his voice rising. I leaned forward slowly, looking him dead in the eye. "No, I don't think I can just get away with it. I know I can. Because unlike you, I actually read my contract and understand the terms." "You didn't even bother to do that, did you?" He was trembling now, trying to regain some of the power he thought he had. But it was too late. The silence in the office was deafening, everyone watching us, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "You're still fired," he snapped finally, his voice growing more desperate. I smiled, almost pitying him. "You know, I really hate to be the one to break it to you, but firing me doesn't change anything. You're just digging yourself into a deeper hole. The CEO already knows about your little stunt. You've made yourself a target." His face turned crimson. This is ridiculous. I'm the one in charge now, not you." I took a deep breath, feeling calm but resolute. "It doesn't matter if you're in charge. You don't get to walk all over people like this. You can't just throw your weight around without consequences. And trust me, I'll make sure there are consequences. Big ones." At that moment, the CEO walked into the room, his presence instantly commanding the attention of everyone in the office. He looked at the nephew, then at me, then back at the nephew with a look of disdain. "I think it's time we have a chat, nephew," the CEO said, his voice cold. "I'd like to know exactly why you thought it was a good idea to fire someone who actually understands the business." The nephew's eyes went wide as he stammered. "Me but uncle, I save it," the CEO snapped. "We're going to have a full review of this entire situation. And I'm going to need you to explain why I shouldn't revoke your access to everything, right now. You've made a mess of things, and I don't think I'll be able to clean it up for you this time." The nephew stood frozen, his confidence draining away as the reality of the situation set in. His uncle had just turned on him, and there was no coming back from that. I could feel a sense of satisfaction welling up inside me as I watched the nephew shrink under the pressure of his uncle's authority. The CEO turned to me then, a look of acknowledgement in his eyes. Sam, we're going to make sure you're compensated properly for all this. And I'm going to need your help getting things back on track around here. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. I smiled, the feeling of victory sinking in. Happy to help. The nephew, looking defeated, mumbled something about needing to take a break and shuffled out of the room. No one stopped him. I could tell that whatever support he thought he had left was gone in an instant. I knew this was just the beginning of his downfall. The CEO turned to the rest of the office, his voice firm. Everyone, let's get back to work. We have a company to run. But as I walked back to my desk, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The feeling of getting the last laugh, of seeing the person who thought they were untouchable finally face consequences, was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. I wasn't just going to let someone ruin everything I'd worked for. And now, I had the power to make sure they paid for it. As I sat down, I glanced over at the door where the nephew had just exited. I couldn't help but smile to myself. He had underestimated me, thinking I'd just roll over. But now he knew, never mess with someone who's willing to fight back, especially when they've got a contract that spells out exactly how things are going to go. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally in control of my own destiny again.